Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. On this week's episode, I interviewed Bruce Fenton. He is running for the U.S. Senate seat in New Hampshire. He is running under the Republican Party, but he is a Libertarian candidate. And he has been around Bitcoin for a long time. So he kind of, you probably have seen his video. If you don't follow him on Twitter, you probably seen his video where he, in the Republican primary debate, and they were asked what federal agencies he would get rid of, and he was listing a bunch like Department of Education, blah blah blah, and he said, and Blackrock and Vanguard, and start going into them, and he's like, nobody's talking about them, so that went viral. I think a lot of people have seen, a lot of people kind of agree in the Bitcoin space. So I wanted to have him on and we talk about his origins in Bitcoin back in 2013, and he is a cypherpunk stockbroker. Yeah, he did an online filibuster a couple weeks ago that went for 33 hours. So he wanted to break the record, and that's what he did. I When you guys listen to this interview, it's a little bit choppy on the internet, and I will blame that the three-letter agencies. That's what I joke about and say that they're tapping into our feed because he's running for, as a libertarian. They want to stop him, so that's what they were paying attention to. Or even though they could just wait until it gets in, the interview gets out there. But anyways, yeah, it's a little bit choppy on the internet, so I apologize. Sometimes there seems to be like a little bit of a delay in like my responding, or like maybe I sound a little weird when I respond, or like it was a tough internet connection, and so we did the best we could with what we had. But I want you guys to still listen to it. And maybe the only recommendation I would have is, if you listen to this on fast forward, maybe bump it down, like, if you listen on 2x, listen at like 1.5 or something like that, just so that the choppy Zoom audio doesn't get chopped up too much in the sped up uh, speed. But yeah, Bruce had a lot of great things to say, so I really want you guys to listen to this one and enjoy it. And also, thank you to our sponsor, the Bitbox O2 hardware wallet. Get your Bitcoin only hardware wallet from Shift Crypto. Go to shiftcrypto.ch/Bitcoin made simple. Use the promo code Bitcoin made simple to get 5% off. Also, go to Movies Plus, or go to mymoviesplus.com, search Movies Plus in the app stores. And thanks to Movies Plus, that is my streaming platform that is streaming for freedom. So we're doing everything we can to get every voice out there, and not just be leaning one way or the other in the political world. But we have 5 Bitcoin docs on there, and we also have the Hard Money Show with Natalie Brunell. So check it out. You can get a free trial, 7-day trial. Use the promo code SWAN, and you can get it for $20 for a year. So do that. And thanks to our friends at Swan Bitcoin for partnering with us on that promo. And then finally, I want to thank Upstream Data. You can go to upstreamdata.ca, and they have the wonderful black box, which will be useful for anyone that's out there getting into Bitcoin mining and home mining. It quiets your Bitcoin miner, and it also ventilates it really well and gets the air moving through pretty slickly. So I recommend anyone that's getting into it do that. And then you can just, you could have it in the house, but it's really meant for outside. You can just put that black box right outside and just have it sit there and not bother anybody. And you mine Bitcoin, get your KYC free sats. So upstreamdata.ca for more information. And if you want to get in contact with me, the email for the show is bitcoinmadesimplepodcast@gmail.com. I will talk to you guys later. Thanks. So off the top, I have to ask you, I assume you're a huge Captain America fan?
Yeah, I like all kinds of comics. I'm a super geek. I like all the geek stuff. Star Wars, Marvel, DC, you name it.
Yeah, yeah. Now, what's your favorite? Is Captain America your favorite, or is that just kind of fit right now because you're running for office?
It does fit. I like Captain America a lot. It depends for what. Superman is great for decorating because he's very iconic, but if I'm reading the stories, I usually like more of the Marvel stories. Iron
Hmm.
Man is one of my favorite to read. But yeah, I like pretty much all of it. Good stories are my favorite.
Yeah, yeah, good stories, which is something unfortunately Disney loses touch with. I found with Star Wars. That's my beef with them. I think they completely destroyed Star Wars here in the new trilogy, but I still have the original, so that's all that matters to me.
Yeah, I went to I did a filmmaking screenwriting course one time, like a certificate course. It was like 2 years. So it was I call it film school to my kids. It wasn't quite film school, but it was 2 years.
Uh-huh.
And that was in an era when they were very different with how they made films. They focused a lot more on the script and the story. And these days they focus on the special effects first, and then the actors, and then the packaging, and then the script is a distant thing in the process. So
Yeah.
I like that's why there's so many good movies from the 90s, because that was like the peak of, like they would in those days, that was the last era when they really focused on a script first.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I juxtaposing my son's really into Jurassic Park right now, and we just let him watch the original movie and then like worked our way through to so he can see the new one in theaters. Um and juxtaposing the original with the new ones, I'm like, oh my god, like it's just night and day storytelling. It's completely different. So it's a shame, but that's what I don't know if you poked around on my like website or anything. That's what my company does, is movies. So hopefully to show Movies Plus on my streaming platform, will be hopefully righting that wrong and starting to take it in the right direction. But anyways, so Bruce, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. So you're running for the US Senate seat for New Hampshire, right? And you are a stark libertarian, correct?
Yes. Yeah, that's a pretty good description. Yeah.
And are you running for the Republicans nominee or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm running for the Republican nomination. There's a Libertarian candidate running as a Libertarian, and I'm running as a Liberty Republican. So I'm running for the Republican nomination, which has a much better chance of winning the general. It's hard to win as a third party in America. In this state right now, it's very, very winnable to win as a Republican.
Yeah. It's like, as of now, you can't, like, the third party, as much as I'd love to support it, it doesn't work right now. You know what I mean? And so I agree. I think that's a smart move to go for the Republican nominee. And now, before we get into all that stuff, I want to get into your background. So you're a cypherpunk stockbroker, self-proclaimed on Twitter. Explain that and the origins of that. Were you around in the old cypherpunk days before Bitcoin existed?
No, I wish. No, I became a cypherpunk much later. I didn't even hear about it until after Bitcoin. Cypherpunk is a term described in the Cypherpunk Manifesto, which is like a one-page paper, and it basically says, cypherpunks write code and want to see code as a way to make the world better through things like privacy, especially. And I like that. I like that philosophy. I don't even write code. I have to use a loophole. It doesn't say you have to write code well. I definitely don't write. I write code like a hello world script or something like that, WordPress.
Yeah.
If you count that as code, but I'm not like a plus person. I'm not a real coder, but I believe in the philosophy. You don't have to be a cypherpunk. And then stockbroker, I'm a licensed stockbroker. I have a Series 7, a Series 24 license with FINRA. So I think I'm the only, I'm pretty sure I've got, unless somebody's just copied me in the last couple of years, I've got to be the only person to be using that title. Because in the United States, you can't call yourself a stockbroker unless you're actually licensed. You have to be registered with FINRA and the SEC. And most of those, like if you're at Merrill Lynch or something, they're never going to let you use that as your title. So I think that's a unique title. That's one reason I like it. I care a lot about equities, I care a lot about crypto. So that kind of bridges the gap between, business and Bitcoin.
Yeah. No, it's interesting to see, that you can basically get into cypherpunk after Bitcoin and be a stockbroker, because a lot of people become cypherpunks after Bitcoin. So you've kind of gone through the process that a lot of us had, and that's really good for a political candidate to be relatable. So what was your origins in Bitcoin? And I guess I should ask you, since you're a stockbroker, like, what was the 2008 financial crisis like, living through that?
I actually, we did pretty well at first in 2008. I saw it coming, and I saw that it was hyped up, and so we did quite well. And then I got, it was a great lesson in my career, because then I got overconfident. I mean, I thought that I was, I mean, I called it exactly. There's a video of me in 2002 calling the 2008 crash. That's on YouTube. And so and it wasn't because I was some genius. I just listened to really smart people who got it right. And so I got it right. And I looked, I looked smart. I did well with our clients. Everybody else was hurting. We had pulled out, and, we did a great thing. So 2008 was an interesting year, but the interesting thing is I got a little bit overconfident, and this happens to a lot of people in trading and investments. If you do real well, sometimes you tend to get overconfident and you need a humbling lesson. So I actually we had a harder year, like 2009, 2010. It was interesting. And that was just purely overconfidence. So it was a very good lesson, and that's happened a couple times in my career. The markets have a way of bringing you back to humility if you get overconfident. I've done that a couple times where I've made really, really good bets, and then my ego gets a little big, and you got to get knocked back down to it. So, but yeah, I mean, and it was also an interesting experience, because it was where I first started really caring about things like bailouts. This $800 billion that they used to bail out, I couldn't understand Trump or the TARP bailout. I couldn't understand why, how Elizabeth Warren and these other people were saying that this TARP bailout was some kind of good thing. And I watched all the experts, and it never made any sense to me, and it still doesn't. And I think they're just totally wrong, fundamentally wrong. So that was probably, one of the things that shaped how I feel today.
Mm-hmm. So do you think that pushed you from being one party or the other? I don't know if you were traditionally Republican or, but do you think that's kind of what pushed you into being a libertarian?
It was around that time period, really. It was, 2008, and the Tea Party movement, and Ron Paul surged in popularity around then. So there's a lot of those factors. So historically, growing up in high school and stuff, I had been Republican, but then, more independent. I liked Ross Perot. I liked, different independent candidates. There was a period where I especially under George W. Bush, I just didn't like that party. I didn't like George W. Bush because of the war, mainly. But yeah, it was 2008. I was really much more libertarian by then, and just continued to be more and more liberty, and that became my circles, and it was right. It was from those circles that I found out about Bitcoin. You asked where I came into Bitcoin. It was hearing about it at PorcFest in 2013. 2012, I think, actually, and then by 2013 I got into it kind of full time.
Oh wow! So you full on came in 2013. Was it pre 2013 crash? I forget what the price level was. Did it crash from like 300, or did it get up to?
I got in before the
1,000?
crash, and then, yeah, and that's probably one of my worst trades. I don't even know how many Bitcoin it was, but I sold a bunch when it crashed. I don't even remember how much. I don't know. I didn't track them. They weren't as important to me back then.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because it was so early. You're like,
but yeah, I was. Yeah, and then I bought a lot more in 2013. I was in fully, and I became executive director of the Bitcoin Foundation, which was the largest industry group at the time, and went on the speaking circuit and writing and talking and investing, and just really getting into Bitcoin. Started hosting one of the most prominent events in the space, the Satoshi Roundtable, and got a front row seat to this whole thing unfolding.
So the Satoshi Roundtable, what would you say are the most significant moments of that, or things that most memorable that stick out to you?
Well, I like the fact that we, there was a couple of years ago there, we had a selfie with Justin Sun and Adam Beck and NVK, all in the same selfie. Nice. And I think that's the thing I'm proudest of. It's the only event I know of that Vitalik has attended, and Safety has attended, Roger Ver has attended, and Brian Armstrong, and hardcore Bitcoiners, Jameson Lopp, NVK, Safety. It's something that reflects our industry. So I think that's what I'm proudest about having. There's been a lot of neat moments. We have Puddle's Pity Party. He's like a 6.5 foot clown who performs, the amazing performer. We've had all kinds of neat people there. We have some great debates. We had some spirited debates back, like roundtable 2 and 3, talking about the block size debate, these kind of things. But what I'm proudest about is that it's had a variety of people that have attended, and they all get along, and it's been a pretty good event from that standpoint.
So Roger Ver hasn't been back for a while, I assume.
Right. Yeah.
he
hasn't come back since, I think, the third one or something. That was probably 4 years.
Where did you stand? What was your view on the block size? Like, where did you stand at the moment whenever it was happening, and where do you view it now?
Yeah. Originally I didn't really understand it, and it took a lot of learning. Adam Back was somebody who spent a lot of time with me talking, about it. My original instinct was like, well, if the company's this, it's good. It's a good thing. But I became more educated about consensus rule and why you can't just change the Bitcoin code. And so that's an important thing to recognize. On the one hand, you say, well, these are the main companies and people doing the economic activity on Bitcoin. If they think something should be changed, it should be changed. It's not a good thing, though, especially, and now it's even more clear, and there's much more of a narrative around this. But at the time that we didn't have that strong narrative, which is that this is something you can't mess with and change to just because powerful people say to. Then that brings us back to the old system. So I was against the change, and I don't think it would have fixed anything, really. I don't think that changing the block size was the thing, because blocks are always going to be full. If you have 1 gigabyte block, somebody's just going to be sending high def video across the blockchain. It's always going to fill. I mean, we'd be doing this if a blockchain was free or paid for by miners, and we had we might be doing this thing on a blockchain. But that would be a huge cost for somebody else to do. It's already expensive, even with the current block size. So your blocks are always going to be full. And so I don't think it would have solved the problem. But the bigger thing is, how consensus works. You want to be really, really, really careful about making any changes in Bitcoin and resisting that, especially from any kind of centralized authority.
Yeah, I often worry where I would have landed had I been in Bitcoin during the block size war, because I know now that the big blocks was not the answer, and I'm firmly a Bitcoin maxi and in the right camp. But yeah, I just sometimes wonder, because it's like, 5 years ago, where would I have been? 5-6 years ago, what was I doing? What would I have thought? What I mean? What narrative would I have bought into? And that kind of makes me like really hesitant now whenever I see anybody rise to any kind of prominence in Bitcoin. I'm like just incredibly skeptical, and I'm like, how are you going to fall apart?
Yeah.
Like, I look at them like, what are you going to do that's going to mess things up here? So maybe that's a trait of Bitcoiners, because I've noticed,
Right.
We tend to crucify some of our own. Has that been going on before 2022?
Yeah, we've seen this movie repeat, and I think a few people have said that they predict Michael Saylor's going to go off the deep end or something. It just, all the signs are there. I mean, he talks about ESG, he talks about corporate governance, he talks about all this woke nonsense, and he won't speak against privacy, for privacy. He won't speak against coin tracking and some of these other things. So it's like, yeah, you can put the Bitcoin hashtag in your Twitter and get some likes, but what do you really believe, Michael? What does Saylor really believe? Does he really believe in liberty? Does he really understand this stuff? Because I don't see any indication in anything. I just see a cheerleader for Bitcoin who gets cheap likes by, sometimes people are smart. Sometimes they're just mindlessly clicking like because it has the B in it. There's a lot of people who don't even have a well thought out philosophy, and they're following somebody without a apparently well thought out philosophy. And there's so many people who just cheer because, oh, it's Bitcoin, he's the Bitcoin guy. And they're like, that's about as dumb as you can get. It's just no depth to it. I mean, that's how people can get fooled. There's a good chunk of people that are just slaves to their narrative. They think they're supposed to be in a tribe, or they think this is the thing that they're supposed to like, and they'll just they'll go for very, very base level. I mean, I could do it. I could just say, Bitcoin, the only way, and put that as a tweet, but it doesn't mean anything. What means
Hmm.
something is freedom and liberty. I don't care if you buy $2 billion worth of Bitcoin. If you're in favor of having coin tracking and privacy measures, and you want some huge nanny state that rules over us through the SEC and 100 other agencies where they have ESG and they're deciding what skin color the people should be on the boards and all of this other nonsense. Um, what's the point? The point of Bitcoin is to break away from the broken, corrupt fiat money system. And I'm not trying to pick on Saylor. I just don't hear him saying that.
Hmm.
He's like he's defending. What's next? CBDCs. So yeah, it's inevitable. Like, that's why you don't want to have leaders in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
You don't want to have powerful people in Bitcoin
Yeah.
because they let you down.
I agree. I'm glad I learned that lesson. I'm trying to pinpoint who gave that lesson to me the best, but it was probably like getting to know somebody like Guy Swan or something really pushed me in that direction where it was like, slay your heroes, all that kind of stuff. And so I was
Yeah,
like actively, and nothing against Sailor. I appreciate what he's done. And I think he fully gets the scarcity part, you know what I mean?
yeah.
And like the gold aspect. But I'm with you there. I'd love to hear him say like start talking about the privacy and speak out against ESG and all that garbage.
Yeah.
Um,
And the
but
evils of fiat. I mean, to him, a lot of it's an investment, which is great, and I appreciate him too. And he's a great Bitcoiner, and he's a great ambassador for the brand. But um, fiat's evil. This is a binary thing. It's right. There's good and there's evil and there's right and there's wrong, and you got to pick a side. You can't
mhm.
be like, oh, I'm Bitcoin man and I buy money. I buy Bitcoin with money and I promote it, and then you also support fiat. No, we got to be against fiat. Fiat's evil. It causes death and destruction all over the world, for-profit prisons, drone bombings, wars of aggression. It's horrible. It's horrible and evil, and we got to fight it. And I think a lot of people in powerful positions are afraid. They're afraid. They like, oh, don't make those waves. We can do the easy stuff. You can go out there and put the B on your Twitter post and get some hashtag love. But what about the real stuff? Where are the people? I want to see people who are not afraid to criticize China, who are not afraid of fiat evil, who are not afraid to criticize the actions of Janet Yellen, who are unafraid and unapologetic about defending privacy. This is what we need. We're in a serious fight here, and we need serious fighters to do it. We can't just have marketing.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, what amazes me with privacy is how difficult it is to get people to just leave you alone. You know what I mean? Like, because like
And
I
it gets
look at,
harder and harder every year. They're in more of our lives. I tell young people, people in their 20s who work on my campaign and work for me. Uh, when I was their age, I would fly. I was in the Navy. I was in Chicago. I'd fly to Chicago from Boston. No ID. All I needed was a ticket. Ticket worked like a bus ticket. You just take
yeah,
it and you give them your ticket and you get on. You could sell your ticket. Even. You could give your ticket to somebody else. And it wasn't even tied to ID. And they put your name on it and they didn't care. It's just like, oh. And now that freedom is totally gone. We have a completely different world. But here's the sad thing: you have a generation of people in their 20s. They don't remember that's the way it's supposed to be. They
hmm,
don't. So even if they were in positions of power, they're not going to. It's not going to occur to them. Hey, let's reverse these tyrannies because they don't even notice the tyrannies. It's like, oh yeah, that's what you do. You go to an airport and you get, people patting you down
you get
and you got to open
fondled and
bags and that's not the way it's. Yeah, it's not the way it's supposed to be. It wasn't. It was never the role of government. And so this, AML, KYC, all these different things. There's so many things that you have to do in today's world that you didn't have to deal with 20, 30 years ago. And so that's bad. We got to reverse that for sure.
get yourself a BitBox 02 hardware wallet. The Bitcoin only hardware wallet that you should get is from Shift Crypto. Go to shiftcrypto.ch/Bitcoin made simple and use the promo code Bitcoin made simple to get 5% off. And we have been shouting and from the mountaintops and telling you guys over and over and over and over again that you need to get your keys off the exchange. So please do it because they're going insolvent. They are going to rehypothecate your Bitcoin and is at danger of being lost and locked up in lawsuits. I mean, anybody that's been around and saw Mount Gox way back when, you already know this story. But if you're new to Bitcoin, go look through. There's a checkered history. There's a lot of history of exchanges losing coins. So the best thing to do is to take self-custody, and put them on your Bitbox O2 hardware wallet. From Shift Crypto, go to shiftcrypto.ch. It's very slash Bitcoin made simple. It's very simple, easy to use. It's a sleek design, and Luke always talks about how sexy it is. So he thinks it's beautiful. And yeah, I think I think he's romantically involved with the Bitbox O2 hardware wallet. So get yourself one and use the promo code Bitcoin Made Simple to get 5% off. Before the cerveza sickness went around, and that's what I call it for YouTube. I don't think they even like the fact that even though there was a lot of KYC and using your passport and everything like that, just telling people. I remember saying last summer, I was like, I remember in 2018, I flew to Berlin for a couple business meetings on a Saturday. I left here on a Friday and I was back on Sunday. And like you have your passport and they check your passport, but like they didn't do incredible scanning or anything like that. I was like, I think they really hated that. Like looking back on it, it's like they didn't like the fact that I could just up and go to Berlin and then come back, and unless it's all up to the passport, whoever is doing the passports. Sometimes they scan it, sometimes they're just like, yeah, come on, and you go through, and nobody checked me into any system. So if they were checking my plane tickets, they would have been able to track me. But it was a system that is gone, and I'm finding, I didn't know that. Honestly, I was such a newbie to this whole big freedom movement. I've always been behind it, but I didn't know who New Hampshire was live free or die, and I live in Pennsylvania. So I always was proud and said we're like the Keystone State, and we kind of hold back and filter out all the garbage that comes from New York before it spreads to the rest of the country. But yeah, we have I moved and got a homestead and all that kind of stuff. And I'm seeing that there's not, I wouldn't even be able with my privacy. I'm sure I could be self-sufficient. I could have all my food, all my water, everything on my own property. And at some point, the government's going to say, you can't do that. You need to stop eating food that you made on your land. Isn't that something that you think will happen?
They already do that in different places in the country.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they already do it. They're trying. There's a category of people, including almost all Democrats, half the Republicans, and presumably a bunch of independents as well. And all of academia and all of Hollywood and almost all of pretty much all of media. There's groups that they just want more and more, and there's no amount of power will satisfy them. They want to control everything. Bernie Sanders, he thinks there's too many deodorants. He doesn't like what Uber drivers are paid. I mean, this guy wants to be a guy who also, by the way, has no track record of ever doing anything in his life. He doesn't know anything. He doesn't know how to run a business. He couldn't run an ice cream stand. And I really mean that. It's hard to run an ice cream stand, to make it profitable. I don't mean that as I do mean as an insult to Bernie, but I'm saying he can't do anything. He's not capable yet. He has the ego to think that he can control everything. And there's a lot of people like that. So yeah, absolutely. They don't want you to grow food, or they don't want you to be self-sufficient. They just want to be involved in every aspect of your life. And it's a totally broken philosophy.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's I just want to I'm in the political party of I just leave me alone. Just leave me alone.
Yeah. So I'm gonna leave me alone.
Yeah, exactly. So all right. So why would you decide to run for office? I would have to ask, because I know we can fix things, but sometimes I waver. I'm on the fence where I'm it can be fixed through politics, or then I'm nope, I couldn't ever see myself running for political office, and it's better off to just, as the people, lead to freedom via your own actions of becoming self-sovereign, all that kind of stuff, relying on each other instead of the government, being friendly to each other instead of being angry with each other like the government wants. But there is the opportunity to run for office. So what really spurred you to do this?
Mainly just where our world is right now, we're in such crucial times. We're in this sort of turning shift in the way the world works, I believe. And I think we're going to either go down a path more tyranny or more freedom. And I really want to be there to try and have us go down the right path, the path of more freedom and less tyranny, to follow the Constitution and avoid more centralized control. And it's a winnable race, very unusual race, because there was no clear front runner at the time I jumped in. It's totally something I can win. And mainly, as far as the argument of, and I have a lot of libertarians, some of my best supporters don't believe in the process. And I sympathize, especially being in the process now. It's very disheartening. It's worse than I realized. It's bad. The process is broken. But if you don't pay attention to politics, politicians they pay attention to you. And there's a lot of there's a lot of damage they can do. They, like 30% of the time. So they do make bad votes that do affect us in our day-to-day life. And if I'm elected, I can cancel out one of those votes and vote good votes instead of bad votes. So it's worth a shot. We have to do something. It is a right that we have, and we have a lot of power. I mean, I could be a U.S. senator, and that would mean something. It's just a matter of people care enough, and if they want to support and vote and get out there. Unfortunately, a lot of people just don't vote. They don't care. They don't get active in politics that much statistically. It's a minority number of people that participate, especially things like primaries. But I'm optimistic. I think people are waking up. I think people care about these issues, and I think they're going to vote accordingly.
Yeah, and I'll say I think it's funny because I'm less inclined to vote nowadays just because everything seems to be a mess. But that doesn't mean that I don't vote. And then I think like you said, people don't vote unless it's like a presidential election, primaries, things like that. But one thing I've mentioned to my podcast audience before that I'll never forget was in Pennsylvania. We in 2021 on the primaries in like May, there was on the ballot to change the constitution of the Pennsylvania so that a governor, because what he had was emergency powers that he could make go for 90 days and then he could extend them in perpetuity without anybody changing, saying anything. And they changed the constitution to be that they are for 14 days and then he needs like both houses to agree if he wants to extend them. And I was like, oh, I told my wife, I said, we're going to go vote for that. And I explained it to her and she was like, yeah, no, that's the only thing I would vote for, non-presidential. So we both voted, and it was kind of cool because like I remember seeing like other people there, and we were like, just giving each other a thumbs up. We were like, yep, we're sticking it to them right now. And it was like a landslide. Nice. It was huge, and Tom Wolf like lost his mind. Like he was just, I can't believe that the Pennsylvania residents would choose this. Yeah, people want freedom. They don't want to be mandated. Like, because I'll never forget, it was heartbreaking whenever he ordered all restaurants to close like 2 weeks before Christmas in 2020. And so we went on like a tour the week before they closed to go to all the like the local restaurants, and we were giving out big tips to everybody because I was like, oh yeah, like you just ruined their Christmas, like that money that they were depending on to buy presents for their kids, like all that joke. So anyways, so I do see that that's a long-winded way of me saying I do see a way that people see the real moments, because voter participation is low, but I think people do, especially people standing up for freedom, they see that moment and they hopefully can endorse someone like yourself that is live free or die. So I want to also talk about your viral tweet where you were talking about defunding BlackRock and Vanguard and everybody. First of all, did you expect that traction?
Yeah, I do a lot of tweets that kind of go viral, so it didn't surprise me. You never know. It's funny, you can say 10 things and sometimes the thing I think is the coolest thing nobody listens to, and something that sort of a throwaway things I barely even, I'm like, I don't know if I should post this or not. Sometimes those will go viral. But yeah, once I said that, it was funny because they asked the question in the debate, in the Republican primary debate. They said, what government agency would you get rid of? I listed a bunch of them. I said, but most of all, BlackRock, and that got a big laugh because obviously it's not really a government agency, but they got $500 billion worth of money. So it's like 10 times more than most large agencies. It's an awful lot of money. I think the Department of Education is a waste. They don't get as much money as BlackRock, so I'd cut them both. And so, yeah, that got a laugh because I think people understand it, and we all know it's true. We all know that BlackRock got this money. It's public information. And for whatever reason, people aren't talking about it. I think that reason might be because they're afraid, certainly a lot of the media and stuff is afraid to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And believe me, we have if anyone notices we have, I don't know if it's coming out through on your side, but it's like a really, really poor internet connection. And I assume that it's because of our friends that are watching through the live stream right now in the NSA and all the other places. Not to be paranoid, but I mean, let's be honest. And I can tell
certainly possible.
Yeah, totally possible. And there's certain things with my business I can't announce publicly yet, but that might cost this as well. I'll tell you afterwards. But it's all good for freedom. Anyways, yeah, so I think that a lot of people in the Bitcoin space really agree with that. Like you mentioned, Department of Education. Like, so you would vote to get rid of it. You would say like start over.
Yeah. Somebody asked me what my ideal bill would be, and I referenced Thomas Massey's bill, which was like a 1-sentence bill that this bill abolishes the Department of Education. I would do the same bill, only I'd have like 30 different agencies, abolish Department of Education, TSA, SEC, IRS. I mean, I'd get rid of all of it, really. And I know that sounds radical to people, but it wasn't. I mean, there was many decades in our nation's history where we didn't have these things. What's radical is the idea that people can be in charge of these things. That it's radical that you would think that people in centralized fancy offices can make decisions better than voters of New Hampshire or Pennsylvania or anywhere else. So yeah, I would get rid of all things. And I kind of joked about that. And I said, well, obviously that wouldn't happen. And then I stopped myself. It actually could happen because this is a 6-year term and we are in very epic, crazy times. Who knows what our economy is going to be like in a year or two? We could have a depression, we could have war, we could have all kinds of things. So all the more important to send somebody like me down there, because as crazy as that is, it may be possible. I mean, if we're out of money and we're bankrupt, even Elizabeth Warren would have no choice but to cut things like Department of Education. So it's particularly important to have people understand change and what's going on in our world right now.
Yeah. Are you a fan of Parks and Recreation, the show?
Yeah.
Okay. I always say my political views are Ron Swanson. That's the political candidate I'll get behind. And listening to you talk about wanting to cut agencies makes me think of the episode where he gets to be a part of gutting the bureaucratic stuff, and he's just like laughing the whole time, and like enjoying himself like a little kid. So would that be Bruce Fenton if you got invited to a meeting to slash the budget and gut the government?
Yes, I would love that. I'd love to cut all of these things, really. I mean, we just don't need them. We just don't need these bureaucrats down in Washington, D.C. telling us how to run our lives. There's hundreds of thousands of these folks between the government employees and agencies and all the contractors. And I do it down there off. I have relatives who live down there, and there's just headquarter after headquarter of like $1 billion company paid for by our tax dollars. And then all these people driving their brand new Ford Excursions and Dodge Vipers and everything else paid for tax dollars. All these people getting 6 and sometimes 7-figure salaries on our tax dollars, and they don't do anything to help us. They're not helping the folks that I talk to in New Hampshire. Zero. We don't need them. None of us need at all in New Hampshire. And I know it's the same for just about anybody else across the country. The only different people have been tricked into thinking that these agencies help them. They don't. They really don't. Totally counterproductive and a total waste of money. And more importantly, violent. It's not just that they're wasteful, it's that they're really violent. Government is full of violence and causes all kinds of death and destruction all around the world. And that's a serious matter we should be accountable for as well.
Yeah. I tell you what, learning, because like I voted for George W. Bush, and I'll admit that, but I fully regret it. Like if I go back, I'd just pick, some third party candidate, even though it wouldn't have made a difference. It just, I just watched the movie Hurt Locker again, and it's a great movie, but like it just Bitcoin has like changed my mind on so much. I'm just saying that like, why were these soldiers over there? Like, well, what were we doing? I'm like, those are my tax dollars.
Yeah.
We're doing these atrocities, and like, and then you start Bitcoiners start to peel back the layers of like what's going on in Yemen, and nobody's talking about it, and like our tax dollars are going there, and to get reference another television show would be like if you ever saw the Good Place, and like the general premise, this doesn't spoil it for anybody, but like the general premise was that like it's really hard for anyone to get to the good place because like you in some way shape or form are infected by the evils of the world around you, like
Mhm.
you're indirectly funding terrible things, and
Right.
so that kind of makes my stomach churn, but hopefully there's more people, and I honestly think there is, like if there's a time for a third party, it's now. Do you think it's totally possible and something that can happen in our lifetimes?
Certainly anything can happen. I mean, we're in times of epic change. I think our world is going to be very, very different over the next couple of years. The last 2 years is unimaginable. Nobody in the world could have predicted these kind of change. It's so big that we're not even thinking about it. A lot of people are still focused. They listen to the pundits and the media and the candidates talk. They talk like it's 1996. They're like, I'm going to lower your taxes by 3%. They just use the name Roe v. Wade, same talking points they've been using for decades. And we are in very, very different times right now. This is a different time. And so yeah, anything is possible. We're going to have a shake. We're going to have more chaos. And we're not going to look, the history books aren't going to say 2020s or, a couple of years, 2020, 2021 about that flu thing. Wow, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
No. This is nth order effects. Gets changed, chaos. Everything is falling apart. The system is broken. The money is broken. The politicians broke it. Everything is a house of cards. Nobody trusts the sources they used to trust. Everything is going to borders change, how people change. Even religions are changing, and people leave a family as basic stuff is completely changing right now. So that could have the main party to be completely transformed. That's probably the easiest thing that would happen. You have like a real strong liberty wing, or Republicans, or one or both parties split, or you have a third party. But the bigger picture is that none of this stuff is going to matter because we're in a new world. We're going to have continued chaos. Ukraine is not the final chapter in the pandemic, nuts. It leads to more and more effects. Credit supply chain and money and else is making an unsustainable system break. So that's a big deal. I think we're going to have a very, very, very different world. Nobody alive has seen the level of change like this kind of fourth turning. What we saw in 1920, 100 years ago. Every 100 years ago, you get these kind of changes, and nobody alive has really seen it before. But we're going to now. So who knows what a world is going to look like, but it's going to look very, very, very different, which is all the more important reason why you need to have a basis. If you're going into some crazy world of new chaos, all the more important to say, okay, what do I believe? What's true? What are my core moral principles? Where is the proper use of, how do we further liberty, freedom, and good versus evil? How do we think about these kind of things? I think that's going to be really, really important in this new chaotic world that I predict we're going to be continuing on over the next coming years.
Yeah, and it's funny, the good versus evil is not talked about enough. And I think that's because a lot of what you see out there is just evil. So they don't want to point out that there's an opposition. They want you to be, I'm the lesser. I mean, how many times have we heard it in politics?
Right.
Like, I'm going to vote for the lesser of two evils. It's like, eesh, like, that's actually a true statement. That's actually happening.
And
so
now we get evil.
Yeah. You, no matter what, you get
Yeah.
evil, and it leads to more evil. And it's just a shame that we've let it get to this point. But to their tip the cap to the people in charge. They did a good job of fooling us to this point. They fooled a lot of people. They had everybody drinking the Kool-Aid, and
Yes.
I think that it's starting to change. So in your vision, you say it could be many different things. What is your hope for, let's say, so when would your term start if you were to win, or when you win, I
It would
guess?
be January.
January
Yeah, it would be
2023.
in
So it goes
January for
6 years. So
six
you'd
years.
be
Yeah.
in till 2029. Okay, so
Yep.
let's look at it through prism of that you win, and you'll be there till 2029, and you get to help push a lot of the change that you want. What world do you see us being in at the end of the decade?
One senator doesn't have too much power, but I think that the changes in the world, because if I'm there, I could be instrumental in helping it. And I'd like to see that is just following the Constitution. I'd like to see pendulum thing where we've embraced world of socialism, authoritarianism, and completely foreign concepts to the way of our country operating. Like the existence of Fauci. Fauci shouldn't have any power at all. No politician should have the ability to businesses down or make recommendations that shutting businesses down or mandate injections or any of these things. I think that's just so far out of what is workable, what is sensible. Hope we see them swing the other way, and I hope we see something like what I said, where 30 agencies are completely, trashed, shut down. I'd like to see federal down by 90%. I'd like to see government getting out of the money business and the failed broken fiat system, let human rights respected, a complete end to the drug war. We need on a whim because of a misestimation. And let's remember this, they totally misestimated the lethality of this virus. And even if they were right, it's to give them authority, more right to shut down businesses. So these were such radical actions. I think we need radical actions. I'd like to see, entire government departments shut down, radical cuts in spending, like 90% cuts in spending, embracing the Constitution, rid of the National Firearms Act, allow people to protect themselves, get government out of the money business, stop wars all over, the place, end the drug war entirely. I think like 70% of Americans are in favor of it, especially to some degree. And some of them are wrong. They're aggressive about it. We need this completely gone, just end entirely. All drug laws. This is the one problem you have is everybody wants baby step. I say things like abolish the SEC, and I understand the SEC well. I've been that for 30 years. I understand the SEC extremely well. And people say, "Oh no, you can't do that," and that's just them being brainwashed. They think that we need these because they've been told that, and they're wrong. We don't need them. We don't need tyrants running our lives. We don't need baby steps and half measures. The SEC, let's lower taxes a couple. No, cancel it all. I'm only one senator, so I can't do that myself. But I think that with other people, I think you're going to have some people like me win in November, and then I think that the next election is only 2 years later. You're going to have a lot more. And this movement, and I think over a year coming up, we could have a very country, and by the end of November, 2 years from now, it could be entirely different. We could have a president and a majority Republican that's a very different type of Republican party and very much more liberty.
Yeah, and that's what we need, frankly, because I've seen the meme. I'm sure you've seen the meme go around where it says, there is no other place to go to. Like, I remember having this thought at one point. This is probably the beginning of my thoughts of like, why we need to restore our freedoms. And I was like, all right, hypothetically, let's just say everything went to crap here. What, like, there's a new world to go to. This is it. Like, there's no new frontier
Right.
that would be the next place that, is going to be the place that supports freedom. So it really is about, digging our heels in and defending freedom, here on the home front, because, we're the place that the people come to for that. So we need to get back at that, and I think people voting for someone like yourself will help push that in the right direction. And like you said, not just a Republican majority. I think a new breath of Republican life. Not the Mitt Romneys of the world, not the rhinos. And everybody laughed at Ron Paul all these years, but like, boy, he has been so right. He's just nailed it on so many things. So you're like, well, maybe we should listen to that guy. So yeah,
Exactly.
I think that's what's going to happen is we'll see a new face of the Republican Party, and that's really the way that you create a third party. Is you have to change it from within, and then like those rhinos can go break off and be their own thing, and let them wither and then
Yep.
and move forward with your own plan. So before I let you go, I got to ask you
Yeah.
about you did a online filibuster last week, and to let you know how, like, I knew
Yes.
that it was happening because I follow you on Twitter, and then I emailed, there was somebody with business that I emailed. He said, "Hey, I'm really busy today. By the way, if you have a lot of stuff working on, you should jump into this filibuster all day." And it was somebody sent me the link, so it was just funny. But how long did it go for? How long did the
Cool.
filibuster last?
So I wanted to speak nonstop in honor of Senate ability to, speak as long as they hold the floor. And I made 33 hours, 9 minutes. And I took 4 restroom breaks, all under 4 minutes each. I picked the rule with Strom Thurmond. He had done 24 hours. And he did take a couple restroom breaks. And so other than that, I spoke nonstop, other than when somebody's asking a question. And in that, I tried to keep because I will be basically nonstop speaking as close to, the real long speech as possible, like the real filibusters. And so, yeah, I was proud of that.
Thanks again to Bruce for coming on, and thank you guys for listening. And also thanks to our sponsor, the BitBox02 hardware wallet from Shift Crypto. Go to shiftcrypto.ch/Bitcoin Made Simple. Promo code Bitcoin Made Simple to get 5% off. I'll talk to you guys later.